And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Christopher Jordan, composer of instrumental music incorporating everything from the frequencies from within the solar system to binaural beats and even brainwave frequencies. His music is designed to help listeners relax, and each track is designed to be used as a tool for meditation and to help listeners reach deeper levels of relaxation and self-exploration. Christopher, thank you for joining me today, and welcome.
Jeff, thank you so much for having me on. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, Christopher, how did you get into all this type of music in the first place?
I was fascinated by, since I was a kid, I have been fascinated by electronic circuits, things like that. And when I hit, I guess, later high school, early college, one of the first things I became fascinated with was subliminal psychology. Just the idea, and I forget how I got introduced to it. I think it was my brother who had come home with a book from college where it was talking about the old subliminals that were put in movie trailers, things like that, like have a Coke, that kind of stuff, where they actively went and made laws against it. It was so effective. And it just blew my mind that, like, wow, your brain can see like that one thing out of 30 that's moving so fast. It's just incredible. And that really kind of wormholed me into the world of subliminal psychology. And just through looking that stuff up at my local library, came across the idea and the concept of the work of Linsfield, and the idea that your brain is always looking for a pattern to begin with. The concept of Linsfield was basically putting a blue field in front of your eyes and subtracting the rest of your sensory. So putting a mute field around so you wouldn't hear sounds, and eventually your brain will start to hallucinate because it wants input. And it's pretty wild. You will start seeing geometric patterns, all kinds of things. And that led me into the world of the Monroe Institute and finding out about binaural beats. And I was fascinated. I began, I guess, making my own kind of subliminal learning tapes for school, things like that, and like recording my lessons for tests and putting it behind music, all kinds of things. So that was really the beginnings of where my work with binaural beats and my awareness of even the concept of binaural beats came from.
Were you inspired by old school new age and electronic artists like Kitaro and Jean-Michel Jarre and Ray Lynch and other musicians like that?
Honestly, when it came to inspiration and when it came to making my music, a lot of my compositional concept came much more from the avant-garde realm. Very John Cage, Philip Glass, much more the arrangement of sonics and sounds rather than melody and harmony. Things like that. A lot of my music for many, many years that I originally incorporated binaural beats in was not intended for meditation whatsoever. It was soundscapes. It was long 45, 30-minute long pieces that were emotive pieces that were thematic, talking about technology, or some of them even about, like the fallen angels, things like that. So I would use binaural beats and frequencies that were disturbing.
Wow.
and actually embed it behind the music. And when people would be like, "Oh, wow, man, I don't know what it was, but that piece like creeped me out." It's like, "Ooh, okay. Mission accomplished." And I had used binaural beats at that point. Like I was showing you, I had a little Voyager, things like that. And there were sequences in there that you could go in and find specific things. It wasn't until the day that I got an actual oscillator and started playing with it that I was able to come up with my own frequencies and find certain things that I'd found through research. Like when people look up the quote brown note, things like that disturb your gut. It's pretty interesting, the world of frequency and how our body reacts and relates to it, Jeff.
For those who are new to my channel and binaural beats, can you explain to those people what binaural beats actually are?
Sure. Binaural beats are basically a perception of sound that is created by your brain. And what happens is it's kind of a subtractive additive process. If you put one frequency in the right ear and its neighbor frequency in the left ear, like 22 hertz and 20 hertz, what you will hear is the difference between the two, 21. Like you will hear the 1 hertz that's missing. So it's actually a tone that your brain creates through hearing two different tones at the same time. Hence the binaural, hearing one tone in the left, one tone in the right. Your brain sums them together and creates a new tone. Here is actually a quick example of that. This is a pure 40 hertz tone. I was telling you that I was in the midst of downloading one, and let me get that queued up, and I can play it for you. This is a pure 40 hertz tone right here that I have used and put behind music.
Well, that's a low tone.
Yeah, and for those unfamiliar with the ranges, your hearing basically operates between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz, 20 kilohertz. So yeah, like you're saying, this is toward the lower register of human hearing. You can hear all the way down to 10. Being able to hear things like 40 hertz or like earth tones like 7, 8 hertz is really hard, because it's not really even a tone at that point. It's a single pulse every 8 seconds.
That's amazing to think about, that the earth makes its own sound. We just can't hear it.
Yeah, and we can feel it, though. We can feel it. And a prime example of that tonal range is the frequency of a cat's purr that you feel and don't hear. That is right at the same hertz rate that the Schumann resonance, right up around 8 to 10 hertz. Schumann is 7.83 hertz. Don't beat me up, nerds, if I'm off by a little bit.
So are you saying that the earth pulses a sound every 8 seconds?
Yes.
It's kind of like a bomb.
Yeah, it is like a heartbeat. Quite literally, it is the heartbeat of the earth. It is pretty remarkable.
I wonder if somebody could capture that sound and then at least just bring it up an octave, so we could hear the beep. You know what I mean?
You can. And once again, I have numerous of those files that I've gone through and captured and done. Once again, one of the albums that I did that I'm busy remastering right now for re-release was Ecliptic, which was basically made for those that do astrologic meditations. So whenever, like right now, when Saturn is deep in the sky and you can see it for hours on end, the concept behind it is that, well, of course, just like you would be affected by Saturn astrologically because it's closer to us, you would be able to tune into that frequency more readily. The concept behind binaural beats is kind of like muscular training, but for your brain, Jeff. It's the idea of the more regularly you expose your brain to a frequency, the more readily it will produce it on its own. So let's say if you were giving your brain alpha waves, you could help yourself get into a state of sleep faster. Alpha waves are that first realm of sleep when you start drifting off and really relaxing. And Then it moves into things like theta waves when you're in deep REM sleep, that kind of stuff. So you can actively make programs that ramp you from constant active, energetic brain, creative brain, all the way down to a deep relaxation of sleep and then back up. One of the programs I used to use on this little thing was called the 15-minute nap. And it basically gave you the equivalent of an hour and a half of sleep in 15 minutes. It was pretty remarkable. It was literally one of the best power naps I've ever had in my life. I did it regularly for a long time. It was pretty incredible because, yeah, it takes you naturally through what your brain would consider the process of deep sleep in a rapid amount of time. It's pretty crazy.
If we go back to that Earth pulse that we were talking about,
sure.
Does that ever change? Like, is somebody monitoring that 24 hours a day? And like, if there's something going on in the Earth, does the frequency ever change or the pitch, the tone ever change? And then they can say, uh-oh, the frequencies change, something's going to happen.
There are numerous Schumann monitoring stations out there. There's a popular one that just put a big thing out on social media where they had a generative pattern going on inside of their Schumann resonance output. However, that ended up being a grounding issue inside of their equipment, which is why it was getting that fully repetitive fractal looking signal. A lot of people were like, oh my God, the Schumann resonance is going crazy. And it shot across social media, Jeff. If you follow any of those communities, if you're involved in any of the earth change communities, especially the psychic earth change communities, stuff like that, it was a big deal when it happened. And Benjamin Lonetree, he's a big frequency scientist who's been around for a long time. He was one of them that was like, hey, this is actually showing a problem in their circuitry, guys. But yeah, there are numerous Schumann resonance websites that you can go to and see there are micro fluctuations that happen. But it's pretty regular because of the rotation of the earth.
What about frequencies? Like, which frequencies affect our body more than others?
It's a combination of frequencies, Jeff, that can affect our bodies. The ones that really affect our brains are things like gamma waves that are, higher than 30 hertz. And just so you know, hertz is a rating of pulses per second. Kind of like there's BPM in music, which is beats per minute. There is pulses per second, and that's the hertz rate. If you've ever noticed that you get tired or fatigued around fluorescent lighting. Fluorescent lighting is a prime example of 60 hertz. If you've ever heard hum in your guitar amp, if you're a musician, that's 60 hertz. That's 60 cycles per second. That is typically because you've plugged into an outlet that has a dimmer on it or something that's drawing a certain amount of power, like a refrigerator, other things like that at the club. The hertz rate of fluorescent lighting is basically flashing at 60 times per second, which is 2 times faster than your eyes can see. Your eyes operate between 23 and 30 frames per second, which is why animation in old school, like 35 millimeter film operates at that flash rate. That's where the brain is processing. So
I didn't realize that an actual light bulb is actually flickering 60 hertz per second. I just thought it was constant.
No, it is a constant flashing that you are seeing that's happening twice as fast as your eyes are able to see. So for every frame that your eyes are seeing, there are 2 pulses of light going on, which is why it looks like it's on constantly.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Frame math. Go video math.
Well, let me go back to this. Are you saying that anything over 30 hertz stimulates our brain? What were you saying about that? That affects our brain?
It's the fact that it affects your brain twice as fast.
Twice as fast.
So there's a reason why when you're in the offices with that kind of lighting, when you're in front of, when your parents said, hey, quit watching that idiot box, your eyes see at that frame rate. So when you were watching old school TV, you were watching something that your brain was perfectly ready to sync with, frame rate wise. Now, when you're talking 5994 in HD, instead of 2997 in film, now you're talking, your brain is able to entrain into that frequency twice as fast.
Really?
Which means it's also going to get tired and zombified twice as fast. Now we're talking 120 hertz with Ultra HD and 4K.
Right.
So yeah, it's really interesting when you start thinking about these frequencies and flash rates and the way that they actively interact with your brain. You know, like, thank God that there are actively laws, Jeff, that prevent them from using this for subliminal uses, because yeah, it would be 4 times as effective as it used to be.
Right.
You know,
I guess if you could just flash something in one frame every now and then, you could flicker that in and subliminally do anything. And
exactly.
I guess your brain would still pick it up though, right?
It does. Your brain still picks it up. It still decodes it. Even though you were watching Let's All Go to the Lobby at the movies, there was 1 frame out of 30 that said drink Coke. You had many options when you went to the lobby. For some reason, you were thirsty for Coke. You know? And yeah, your brain now has 4 times that information being shoved into it, which also means it's tired 4 times faster.
So are you saying that it would be healthier to just do standard def TV?
Oh, absolutely. I have been a proponent of that for years. And I mean, granted, it may be my conspiratorial nature that leads me to think that, hey, yeah, you know, it is absolutely something that we need to consider health-wise. How long we spend in front. My wife was recently in an accident, and I was explaining to her that frame math and the fact that, like, you're sitting in front of a high-def screen now, your eyes are going to be strained 4 times faster than if they're looking at the world around them. You know, just the natural world.
And it's so crazy because you go to an electronics store, they're telling you if you want ultra clarity, you've got to go to 4K, or the next thing is 6K or 8K.
Oh, no. A couple years ago, one of the shows I am on is Talking Sound, and I go to CES every year, the Consumer Electronics Show. And one of the people that we got to interview was the NTSC Society, the people who come up with the video standards. And they were explaining that within the next 5 years, 8K will be the adopted standard, period. You will be hard-pressed to go out and find a screen that is anything less than 8K. Even if you're watching on a 4K screen and you watch things like football, the news, and you're like, oh my God, that white, it's so blinding. Why is it so bright? It's because they're shooting with a 12K camera. So that what that means is that the RGB, the red, green, blue, that is comprising the white color that you're seeing, the same way that the rainbow comprises white light that we see, there are now 12 million more versions of that red, green, blue, which means when they combine to white, the gamut of it is higher and brighter because it's made up of more spectrum. You're being compressed down to the 4K, which makes that like ultra bright because that's as bright as you can go. You can't match that color with what you're looking at. So it's really interesting the way that frequencies affect everything from what we see to how we process reality to even health things. You know, there have been numerous studies where they have shown healing qualities of frequencies inside of burn wards, inside of cancer wards. There was a big study that was just done showing raw frequencies being like ultrasonic frequencies being blasted at viruses and them being obliterated. Pretty incredible.
Now, to play devil's advocate,
Oh, absolutely.
with this 4K or 8K, you are getting more clarity, more sharpness in picture. And I guess that's why the electronic industry thinks it's the way to go, is because they want more clarity.
You are getting more depth of color. With more depth of color comes a richer black, which gives you more depth of field and sharper focus. So yes, by all of that, absolutely. But I guess my question comes down to, at what point are we at the physical limitation of what nature has provided us for our eyes? Mm-hmm. At what point are we literally just like putting pixels on a screen that our brain can't even see or process?
Yeah.
Because our eyes are not that of a parrot, that's made to see in greater detail. Like a parrot sees like 18 times better than we do. Dogs see better than we do. Like they could see that definition on a screen. Mm-hmm. Can we? Mm-hmm. Is the real question. Yes, there is a quantifiable difference to your eyes. Colors look different. Mm-hmm. Colors are sharper, more vivid. There's more range of reds, greens, blues. So that is what you're seeing. Whether or not there's actual more, quote, definition in the picture or sharpness, that's mainly because of the blacks in the image, stuff like that, and the way that the pixels are processed. So a big discussion that I see in a lot of groups, Jeff, is, how are they able to take these 35 millimeter films and upgrade them to 4K? In all actuality, there are many, many, many more pixels in a 35 millimeter frame of film than there is in 4K video. So in all reality, what they are doing is showing you that 35 millimeter footage with new technology that can process all of those pixels. Whereas before, the projector and the lens just was not capable of showing you everything that was actively there. So yeah, pretty wild. Like even our old technology from movies that was made in the 60s, 70s are still as good or better than 4K video when they were captured analog.
So I guess still recording or shooting in film is still better than digital.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just more expensive.
Extraordinarily, prohibitively expensive. Kind of like recording in analog. Whenever you go to a studio, like, yeah, there is a marked difference between drums that you record all digital and drums that you record on 2-inch tape through a tube preamp. Like, there is a marked difference in the way that they sound because you're actively manipulating physics and magnetics to capture that sound, as opposed to a 1 and 0 processing and replication of what that sound was.
I interview a lot of near-death experiencers, and a common thing that they say is that on the other side, the colors are amazing. You may even see colors that you don't see here, and it kind of made me think about that when you were talking about, the changes in colors that we're getting with 4K.
Well,
or 8K or whatever.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And even when you think about that concept, Jeff, because everything is frequency. It's all frequency. Like when you get down to every bit of physics, it's frequency. You're in San Antonio. I'm in Austin. We are sharing an electron shell. We are 90% empty space by all high school physics. Ask any high school physics teacher, and the conundrum is the table I'm touching right now even existent? Or is it a repulsion of electrons of an agreed upon substance? That we have all collectively agreed, this is table, this is wood, this is what it feels like. Mm-hmm. What we're actively feeling is just a repulsion of electrons in empty space. It's really crazy when you start thinking about that. One of my favorite things from the new Flash movie, I don't want to ruin it for anybody. But he actively phased for the first time. It was great. I don't know if you're a Flash fan.
I haven't seen the movie.
Any Flash fans out there might be familiar with the concept of him phasing. And basically what he does is he matches the vibrational rate of a wall or a door and then passes through it. So he puts his hand up to it and then he vibrates his molecules at the same rate and he's able to pass through it. That's utterly and absolutely possible by all laws of physics.
Well, when I talk to near-death experiencers, we talk about that the other side is right here. It's just in a different frequency.
Well, and I'm gonna pop this up on screen in place of me real quick. My show computer. This is one of the slides that I show regularly whenever we talk about this on my show, Jeff. Is the idea that look at that tiny little slice. Now, this is the entire electromagnetic spectrum. Everything. That tiny little slice there between 350 and 800 nanometers. That's all that we can see in here. That's it. There is that entire universe of frequency band that is fully occupied by things. Stars, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of energies, everything else. That is the only slice of it that we are able to see and experience. The only slice. But the rest of that is fully existent around us 24/7. So when you consider that, yeah, absolutely. I do not doubt the fact that you're going to see in a totally different realm of color when you travel to the other side. That you're going to be opportuned to be able to see in all of these spectrums, that all of that, because you no longer have the filter of this blocking you. Frequency wise, I utterly grasp that. And that even when it comes to afterlife, that's pretty well where I lie, Jeff. I was brought up Roman Catholic. I spent my first year in college in the seminary. Spent many years as an assistant youth minister and CCE teacher. Taught many years of confirmation and adult RCIA, all kinds of things. But when it comes down to it, I am a conservation of energy person. I do not believe that we get into the afterlife because of a creed that we follow. I do not believe that we get into the afterlife because somebody splashed some water on top of us. I believe that we get into the afterlife, period, because we are energetic beings and energy cannot be destroyed. It can only change form. Our energy goes somewhere. It rejoins some system of physics in the universe. It cannot just dissipate. That's not how it works. So,
have you had any paranormal experiences yourself?
Yes, I have. Is the answer to that, Jeff? Let me answer your question before I share my stories. Yes, I have had numerous paranormal experiences. I recall vividly the day that I met what I consider to be God. Wasn't a person, wasn't a thing, anything like that. It was a presence, and an all-consuming, all-surrounding presence while I was at the altar and serving. And it was a very, very open-minded priest who happened to be at the altar, and I went up to him and gave him my experience afterward. I was like, this was really strange for me. I was here, but I wasn't here, man. Like, I don't know if I disappeared. Like, I have no idea. I was just in a state of ecstatic presence where I could feel the presence of what I believed and knew to be my God, creator, universe, what have you. My definition of that has never changed. Do I go to church on Sunday? No, I don't. My spirituality and my conversation with God is daily. But that was what truly began my spiritual path, Jeff, was that one stealing moment where fortunately I had an open-minded priest that wasn't like, oh, well, kid, I don't know about that. It sounds kind of crazy. Maybe I shouldn't give you the wine anymore. And I had a priest that was like, Chris, you should really explore that. That is a very special and beautiful moment that you should never, ever deny. Actually, I have a painting on my wall behind me that same priest gave me when I entered the seminary. And I think about him regularly because it was hard for me when I left, Jeff. It's hard for a lot of guys when they leave, because there is a large feeling of failure spiritually.
Is there any feeling of fear, like you didn't finish, so now you're
Yes.
going to hell?
Not necessarily going to hell, but that I've failed. I failed. And specifically that I had failed my God. that was the rough one. That was the rough one. And it took me many, many years to realize that like I didn't fail. I utterly succeeded by just answering to begin with. Like I picked up the phone. I had the conversation, that was success to begin with. Because I didn't see things through to my belief, it was failure. That was all on me and utterly self-imposed. And that I think is a reality that all too many people put upon themselves in many different ways, whether it's a call to religion, whether it's the self-imposed weight that we put on our shoulders every day instead of just accepting the fact that we are a human being. We mess up. We're humans. We make mistakes. We make bad decisions. Sometimes we make great decisions. It's all weighed differently. And it took me a long time to come to that. And along the way, I had numerous paranormal experiences. I would definitely say that there is that concept of wherever God's active, so is the devil. There were a couple experiences that I had in the seminary, like on the seminary grounds, that were more than hair-raising experiences, where I was definitely felt the sense of being followed by something that was of ill intent, something that was not necessarily friendly, is what it felt like. And that was
like
on
an
numerous
entity.
occasions there. Yeah. And many years later had the experience of a couple of experiences of shadow people coming into my room. One experience where one physically touched me and grabbed me. That was another life-changing one. And a big reason why I have gone down the paths that I have, and why I am no longer, I guess, really a practitioner of faith in that way. There were really no answers for me, Jeff, and that was pretty hard. That was a pretty hard reality for me to have from my spiritual directors, that wait a minute, you tell me that there is a dark thing stalking my soul around every corner. And that salvation is necessary, and that I have to believe this. I have to believe this factually with nothing but spectral evidence. But when provided evidence of the spectral, you certainly seem to just kind of, which is scary to me.
As a composer,
Yeah.
and if you've been sitting down composing with binaural beats, let's say for an hour or two, just having the binaural beat rolling in the background while you're writing music, have you ever noticed that you got into any certain brainwave or mental states accidentally
Yes.
while composing, and what was that like?
I definitely, I would say that, especially whenever I'm composing as opposed to songwriting, composing is a much more long process where I'm recording 20, 30-minute long tracks. I would definitely say it's pretty close to transcendental for me in the moment, Jeff. Um, I go somewhere. It is definitely a meditative experience as I'm doing it. When I add binaural beats in the background of that, frequently, once I have the binaural beats done, I'll do the first track or two with them present in the mix just so that they're there. But then I cut them off. Um, because I have to maintain some presence of mind while I'm
Right.
recording.
Right.
Because otherwise, yes, I will go away.
Mm.
I'll forget, especially if I'm recording with headphones on or anything like that, where you get the full immersion effect of the binaural beat. Yeah, yeah. But then I go through and I bury them underneath the music, things like that. Like my new album, Pranothana, is a combination of pure tone therapy and binaural beat therapy. So each track is programmed with not only the binaural beat of the chakra of the track, but also the pure tone frequency of that chakra as well.
Can you give us
So,
some examples of the chakra and then the tone? Let's say like the throat chakra. What is
sure.
the tone for that?
Well, I mean, a lot of that comes from octaves of music, things like that to begin with. And when you're getting into the throat chakras, things like that, you're looking at red.
Okay.
Or no, I guess
Isn't
throat
it, is
chakra would
that
be
blue?
blue.
Yeah, blue.
That's blue. So you're looking more up along like 600 hertz, like 684 is the higher end in terahertz frequencies, and lower would be like 438. Most of the chakras themselves are right between 600 and 400 hertz.
So
So,
if you're playing a tone for that, let's
mm,
just say you're playing 600 hertz, which is within that range.
sure.
When you're playing that tone, does that mean you're playing the note that is 600? That's like a high E on the keyboard or something, or where, what are
You
you
can
actually,
do that. Yes.
what is the
Yes.
tone that you're playing? Like if you were going to play that.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, the root of what I'm trying to do lies within that key range, of course, and the notes that I'm trying to incorporate lie within that. The more you can expose your brain to the frequency range, at that point, the more it is readily entrained to that. The whole process of entrainment comes from physics, and it's the idea that two frequencies will syncopate when presented with each other. A prime example of that is if you take two pendulums and move them opposite, they will eventually sync up and then fall out of sync. Your brain wants to do the same thing. It wants to find that pattern and follow it. That's why, despite walking on a different foot in a hallway with your friend, you will eventually syncopate footsteps. Your brain wants to fall into that pattern.
That's very fascinating. It's like
Yeah,
almost something deep to think about that your brain wants to be in pattern.
yeah, yeah. And it really, I don't know. I guess when I started realizing that, was when I stopped having a television in my room at night, things like that. And I found that I slept 100% better. Like it took me for the first few months, it took me a while to go to sleep because I was used to that noise in the background. Um, but it definitely got to a point where uh, I got much more sound sleep because it was unaffected by what was going on in the surroundings. Um, and yeah, I've found that over the years that I've even migrated to next to no television, especially whenever I'm on the road, things like that. I watch very little television whenever I'm on the road because my brain is already overstimulated from work and things like that. The last thing I need to do is come home and stimulate it more. if I'm going to stimulate it, it'll normally be something through binaural beat music or meditation, something like that, to kind of ramp me down from the active and overactive frequencies that are out there.
I was looking at your music, and one of them says that your tracks is at 528 hertz, and another one's at 396 hertz.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? Your track is at 396 hertz.
That is the actual hertz that I have, the pure tone that I have embedded underneath the music. I believe that would be coming from my album, Music for Cosmic Journey, for Meditation and Cosmic Journeys. And a lot of that is pure tone therapy. Once again, 528 is a frequency that is associated with, I guess, kind of genetic code, genetic healing, things like that. Almost the resonant frequency of human DNA. So, yeah.
So are you saying that the whole song is in the key of that 528?
Well, it's that hertz is embedded underneath the music.
Okay.
As a subliminal tone.
So it's there, very, very low level of volume, just kind of a bah in the background.
Exactly.
And what note? Because then if that note is there, it's got to be in the key of that note, right? So for example, whatever the 528 is, like what note is that?
I am trying to remember exactly what note that is. Is it C?
It's a C. It's like probably it's probably not the middle C, a high C.
No. Yeah. Yeah, because middle C would be up around 440.
So 5. So you would just record a track on your keyboard, beep, you know what I mean, and just hold it for 10 minutes, and then
that is when
lower the volume down, and then record music on top of that.
My first track would always be starting with my trusty oscillator, straight. Dial it directly to the frequency note. I don't depend on dialing my keyboard into that.
Right.
Because you've got to fine tune on a keyboard, things like that.
Right.
But I go straight to the oscillator, and that is where I get my underlying tone from. That way it is unwavering and constant. And then I don't have to hold the key for that first track. I can just literally hit record and walk away.
Right.
And set a timer for okay, I want this track to be 20 minutes today. Click, and come in and hit stop. And then, yes, that's my bass track that I record the first 2 tracks to, and typically try to stay within that key, try and keep it in C and related things, unless I am in a dissonant mood. But yeah, everything. And 528 is also a frequency that is used for transcendental meditation. That is one that can help you with lucid dreaming, things like that. So
what are the frequencies within the solar system?
The frequencies within the solar system are pretty wild. NASA years and years ago released an album of the solar system that you can still buy. You can still find it. But a lot of it was recorded by Voyager, things like that, as it passed by the planets. They're once again pretty close to our sounds, where you're looking at the lower range of 10 hertz, things like that, low clicking, that kind of thing. There are some other erratic sounds that come around because of the moons orbiting around them, that kind of stuff. Of course, Saturn and the outer gas giants have some really interesting higher ranges as well, because they have rings of particles flying around them, as opposed, in addition to just their mass that is creating that. So
would you say that if we were in a spaceship and we were passing by Saturn, and if we had the frequency ability to hear that range, whether it's lower or higher, we would hear the planet as we cruised by?
I think if anything, we would feel the planet as we cruised by, Jeff, mainly because of the mass of the planet. Its initial frequencies are so low because of its mass. It would just be radiating space around it with a vibrational field, you know?
Would it still work in space since there's not air?
Yes. You wouldn't, and that's why I'm saying you wouldn't hear it, you would feel it. You would definitely, because the frequencies still exist. They're still there. If the frequency wasn't there, you wouldn't be able to see the color of Saturn.
If somebody wanted to, meditate and choose the right music, what are some tips to help for that?
I truly believe that to be individual to the person. I know people that meditate with instrumental metal music, man, and it blows my mind. But there was recently a study done that, like, apparently people that listen to hyper aggressive metal music are calmer than the typical individual. Like, just, it was like, okay, I guess I can see that. Because after I mixed metal shows for many years, there was definitely a calm that happened.
That's
after the storm.
I was going to say, that's after the mosh pit.
Yeah, exactly. It was definitely a different vibe than Grateful Dead night. Let's just say that. But it was interesting to see that, and to see the fact that there was, amidst mosh pit and everything else, still a vibe of unity going on amongst people, and a vibe of acceptance within a community. It was interesting, very interesting subculture of music to dive down. And yeah, I know people that meditate to all kinds of different music. A very good friend of mine meditates to street sounds, like the sounds of streets and like L trains going by, things like that. To him, that is calming. Having grown up in a large suburban area outside of Chicago, for him that's home. That's peaceful. That's like listening to birds and a trickling stream. So yeah, for me, when I'm looking at meditation music, it is normally normally subdued. I wouldn't necessarily say soft, but subdued in its nature, and definitely something that for me is background. Gets lost rapidly. In period, that's typically the music that I listen to unless I'm driving or something like that to begin with, Jeff. Mainly because even if I'm sitting here and not working on music or whatever, I'm probably editing or something and looking for a specific zone, I guess I'm very driven musically in that way. There are different music that I listen to when I edit pictures as opposed to when I'm doing web design, things like that. It activates my brain in different ways.
If people want to discover your music, what's the best way to do that?
The best way to do that, I am available on most platforms out there. Everything is, of course, available on my website. You can gladly go to my website, artofchristopherjordan.com. All of the albums are available for sale there. You can go to the videos tab. That'll take you to our Vimeo page and everything to be able to purchase and download the actual video series of Pranothana, which is moving chakras with the meditation music going on behind it. So pretty fun stuff. Those go on for like 30 minutes. My kid loves that stuff. I've actually given it to quite a few parents that I know with overactive kids, and it's pretty remarkable to see them want to watch something that is just slowly moving on the screen.
Are you working on anything new?
I am currently working on a couple of different albums. One in my more, I guess, traditional music realm, as the artist No Disassemble. I'm assembling a new electronic music album, and then working on another esoteric album right now called Within the Rocks, where I am actively taking petroglyph symbols from around the world that are similar, many tribal patterns, things like that are incorporated within petroglyphs from numerous cultures, and basically tracing them out black and white and then putting them through an algorithm that turns depth and texture into sound. And some of the sounds that I am getting off of these are very synthesizer like, really, really interesting stuff. So the idea is that the people who drew these petroglyphs were synesthetics who were basically drawing the sound that they heard. And when you look at a lot of these images, they are sawtooth patterns. They're the symbols for water, things like that, yes, are very oscilloscope in nature. A lot of them are very square wave patterns. So interesting concepts that perhaps they were actively drawing what they heard in the world around them.
Now, you also have your own podcast. What's the name of that, and what kind of content are you producing there?
Curious Realm is the name of my podcast. And I talk about a lot of esoteric topics, everything from, I talk to a lot of the talking heads on shows like Ancient Aliens, things like that. A lot of it is talking about esoteric topics, paranormal, lost human civilization. This last week, I was actively out live at America's Stonehenge, talking with the owner of America's Stonehenge about that location. It's really just an exploration of humanity and where we are, where we've been, what we've forgotten over time.
And they can find that on the usual places like Spotify and iTunes, as well as YouTube.
You can find that on every major platform out there. You can find us on our website, curiousrealm.com. We're carried on the KPNL Paranormal Network, all kinds of things. So yeah, pretty much anywhere podcasts are carried, you can find us.
If someone wants to contact you, what's the best way to do that?
Best way to do that is artofchristopherjordan.com. I have a contact page on there, and yes, I have like my last album, Music for the Targeted Mind, came out of the fact of I, through my show, have been connected with quite a community of targeted individuals across the world, and many of them have found out that I make binaural beat music and have come to me for customized tracks to help them with specific things. So yeah, I've had numerous requests for that, for specific music to help people sleep, help kids sleep, that kind of stuff. So if anybody needs to contact me for anything like that, feel free to contact me at artofchristopherjordan.com.
Christopher, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
The world is all frequency, Jeff. We're all frequency. We are responsible for the frequency that we bring into every room that we encounter, and the frequency of every soul that we encounter. It's a beautiful responsibility to have. And it's an amazing world once you realize you can change everything around you simply by changing how you're vibrating and how you're thinking. There's so much hope out there, Jeff. I lived, like I was saying earlier, when I left the seminary, it was a rough time in life for a very long time. And there is always hope. There is always salvation. There is always another turn in the road. Never give up. always know that you are cared for by the universe because you are part of the universe.
Christopher, thank you for that message, and thank
you,
you
Jeff.
for being my guest.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.